Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to this Ad Age B2B custom webcast sponsored by DialogTech, which formerly went by the name If by Phone. The topic of today's webcast is how to drive more programmatic and search conversions in a mobile world. I'm Christopher Hosford with the Ad Age team and your moderator for today. Before we begin, we have just a few quick items to go over. We'll hear from today's presenters, then we'll open the floor to your questions. To participate in the Q&A portion of the webcast, all you have to do is type your question into the Ask a Question text area below the presentation window, and then click the Submit button. You can submit the questions at any time during the webcast, and we'll address as many as possible after our presenters' prepared remarks. You might also note that there's a series of widgets that are available for you towards the bottom of the console. Now let's get started with today's webinar, How to Drive More Programmatic and Search Conversions in a Mobile World. Our presenters for today are Blair Symes, Demand Generation Manager at DialogTech, and Sean Oliver, Senior Product Manager at Optimizely. Blair is an expert on cross-channel mobile marketing, attribution, and optimization. Over the past 17 years, he's published numerous articles, white papers, ebooks, and blog posts on a wide range of topics, including B2B marketing, marketing automation, and search marketing. Sean leads mobile product marketing at Optimizely, the world's #1 experience optimization platform. Prior to joining Optimizely, Sean worked at LinkedIn and Microsoft, where he led growth initiatives, go-to-market campaigns, and channel strategy. Blair, I'm going to turn it over to you. It's all yours.
Great. Thanks a lot, Chris, and welcome everybody to today's webinar. I just wanted to give a quick introduction about DialogTech for those of you who are not familiar with us. We are the combination of two companies, If by Phone and Mongoose Metrics, and we are the leader in call analytics and automation software for both enterprise marketers and for agencies. We have a platform called Voice 360 that works before, during, and after the phone call, and it's got a full suite of technology, including real-time call tracking, call scoring, call routing, recording monitoring, and analytics. And we've got quite a few enterprise and agency customers in a wide variety of industries.
Great. Thanks, Blair. Hi, everybody. My name is Sean, as Chris mentioned earlier. I'm with Optimizely. Optimizely is the world's leading experience optimization platform. So we offer A/B testing, targeting, and multi-channel optimization services for both websites and mobile apps. You can see some of the customers that we have on the right side of the screen here. We've got customers in retail, e-commerce, media, and B2B. And to date, we have over 8,000 customers worldwide, both on the web and in mobile. And we deliver more than 6 billion optimized visitor experiences per year to customers. So that's Optimizely.
Great. So let's begin with the idea that the world has gone mobile. Basically, what this means is that everyone today has a smartphone. There are 178 million people in the U.S. alone with smartphones. That's over 56% of the population. 74% of all mobile devices are smartphones, and that's supposed to be in excess of 80% by the end of this year. So when we talk about mobile, when you see stats about mobile, and we talk about how marketing has gone mobile, we're really focusing a lot of that data on smartphones and the use of smartphones and how that's impacting marketing across every channel. A few stats to think about in terms of it's not just everyone has a smartphone device and a mobile device. They're actually using those in greater numbers and greater amounts. So you can see some data there about how mobile now exceeds TV viewing. So people spend more time on average in front, engaging with their mobile devices than they do in front of a television set, which I know is a marketing channel near and dear to the hearts of many Ad Age viewers. And when you're talking about digital media time, 40% of all digital media time now is on the desktop, but 60% is actually and growing on mobile devices. So when we're talking about people engaging in digital media and digital marketing, a lot of that is happening on mobile devices and on smartphones, and with mobile apps actually claiming the majority of that time at 88%. So this webinar is specifically around programmatic and search. So I wanted to set the stage with some numbers, some recent numbers here about how display spending is going programmatic. So according to a recent study, 45% of U.S. display ad spending is programmatic. Was programmatic in 2014. That's over $10 billion of marketing spend. And by 2016, it's projected to be 63% of all U.S. display spending will actually be programmatic, a huge amount, $204 billion in spending. So when we're talking about display really is going programmatic. And programmatic display is really going mobile. More stats show that mobile accounted for nearly half of all U.S. display ad spend in 2014, and it's expected in 2015 to surpass, for mobile to surpass for the display, and then by 2016 it'll be 69% of all programmatic ad expenses will be for mobile, targeting mobile devices. The same is true, if not more so, for search. Mobile search, whether we're talking about paid search or organic search, has gone mobile. 50% of all searches today take place on mobile devices. 40% of Google's paid search clicks are from mobile. 30% of search spending is mobile, and 42% of organic search visits are from mobile. So mobile is playing a huge role in search, both on the paid and on the organic side. And what's great about mobile search is that when mobile searchers are shown to buy, so when it's a much more engaged audience than what we're seeing on the desktop search side. So you can see some stats there. The mobile people are much more engaged and ready to buy when they run a mobile search, and that purchase more often than not is occurring offline. 65% of mobile searchers want to complete a purchase within a day, so there is an urgency to it. There is a timeliness to it. These are people who are ready to take action, and 64% of those actions occur offline, whether that is over the phone by a phone call or as an in-store visit. But when people are making mobile searches, it's very important to understand that this is a great audience, an engaged audience, and that they are ready to take action. And that action is often not occurring digitally as a web lead, but more as an offline conversion. I find this stat to be an amazing statistic. So there's a study that's been done by an analyst firm called BAA Kelsey that tracks conversions from mobile search. And you can see last year there were 38 billion phone calls made from mobile search alone in the U.S. 38 billion calls. And what's even more amazing is that they're projecting by 2018 that there'll be 73 billion calls just in the U.S. and just from mobile search. So as we've shown already, search is going mobile, and a lot of the time when people are converting through mobile search, they're doing it by making a phone call. And the reason why that is something called click-to-call. Many of you should be familiar with click-to-call already, but if you're not, it's the idea that you can tap on either a phone icon like the one on the left in a mobile search, or if someone goes to your web page or engages with an email or any kind of digital content on their smartphone, they can tap that phone number and it'll automatically trigger an immediate call to that number, to that business. And it's just easier to do that on a small screen on a smartphone than it is to try to use your thumbs to fill out a web download form. Plus, people who are running searches are often looking for immediate answers. They're looking for an immediate engagement. So they don't want to wait to have a salesperson contact them. They're more interested in engaging immediately with the sales rep, which is fantastic if you're in marketing or in sales, but it also means that the phone call is the most natural conversion on a smartphone. And I think this is an interesting stat as well, is that people are calling throughout the buyer journey. It's not just when they're ready to make a purchase, although they are calling at a very high rate when they're ready to engage with a sales agent and make a purchase, but they're calling throughout the buyer journey. So if you're involved in B2B marketing, or if you're involved in marketing with a product that has a longer sales cycle, for example, then you have to know that the marketing you're doing, you're generating phone calls throughout the process. So top of the funnel advertising and content is generating calls. People who are researching are calling, and then people who are ready to buy, and even afterwards through support are calling. So it's a very engaged audience, and they're calling you throughout the buyer journey. And as I said, that's terrific news if you're in marketing and sales. There's some statistics that show that 66% of sales managers rate phone leads as either good or excellent more than any other type of lead. So if you're in marketing, your sales agents or the sales agents of your clients, if you're an agency, are looking for those engaged leads, and those high quality leads, and that is most often a phone call. And there's stats that show that phone calls convert 10 to 15 times more than web leads. People who are filling out web forms are often just kicking the tires, but people who call are engaged and ready to go. It's why U.S. marketers are spending about $68 billion a year on ads just meant to drive phone calls. $68 billion. It's a very large amount, and it's just on ads to generate calls because those are often the best type of lead. So how do you take advantage of this? How do you drive more conversions from mobile? One way is to take advantage of call extensions. So if you're not familiar with call extensions in search, it's the idea that you can add either a phone number or a click-to-call icon inside your paid ads. So you see two examples, one from Bing on the left and one from Google on the right. But Google has put out a fascinating study that showed that 70% of people who are running mobile searchers will click on that button. They will click on that button and make a call directly from the ad. And even if they don't, if there is a call extension in the ad, they're still more likely to click through and visit your mobile landing page. So 8% more ads with call extensions get an 8% on average higher click-through rate than ones that don't. Even if people aren't looking to call you immediately from the ad, they'll still click on that ad. They'll still be more prone to visit your landing page if you've got a call extension. So a tip if you're engaged in local search, 40 to 50% of mobile searches have local intent. So when we're talking about mobile searches, a high percentage of those rather, are looking to contact a business locally, someone near them. So if you're trying to take advantage of that type of audience, be sure to use test a call to action of call now and include a local number. Local numbers, people call far more often from local numbers than they do from toll-free numbers if they're looking for a local business. So be sure to include a local phone number in your ads and on your mobile landing pages for local search. Include keywords like near me or in Chicago or wherever you're targeting those local ads. People will zero in on those. Obviously use call extensions like I talked about in the previous slide, but also consider using location extensions, as you can see, where there are links to get directions to where you are or to a map or that someone can actually go and find you. And if you do all of these things together, people are far more prone to engage with your paid search ad. Now, we're talking about programmatic display ads, and you're talking about mobile. An interesting and perhaps alarming stat to some is that some research shows that up to 40% of mobile display clicks are accidental. People don't mean to have clicked on your ad. It's just that they were engaging with the screen and clicked on it by mistake. But what I found interesting about this study, the last two bullets, there was a study that just came out late last year that showed that if you optimize your display campaigns on click-through rates alone, so just that first click on the ad, the results might be misleading. They showed that people who game apps, for example, mobile game apps, often get a higher click-through rate than other apps for display advertising. However, those are often accidental, and people don't often take a secondary action, such as making a phone call to that business, or looking for directions if it's a local business, or clicking through to that website from the landing page to get more information on whatever it is you're advertising or selling. On the flip side, something like weather apps, they received a 27% lower click-through rate if you optimized for those. However, the secondary action, the things that most marketers care about, is what happens after the click, the engagement afterwards. That was much higher. So be careful when you're optimizing your display advertising, and think about not just the click, the initial click-through rate, but what happens, the secondary actions that happen afterwards. So using display to complement search is a strategy that our customers love to use, and that's basically their stats that show that 27% of people will perform a search for your business after viewing your display ad. So even if your click-through rates on display ads are low, those ads in and of themselves might not be producing high conversions, but they might be leading to people towards running searches for you, and those conversions might be taking place on the search side, on the search channel of your marketing. And the second stat, which is great, is that conversion rates jump 59% when people conduct a search related to a display ad. So the people who are running those search ads are then not just are actually converting on your paid ads. So using search and display together as a cohesive strategy makes a lot of sense, especially for mobile. So my last point before we head off to a poll question is to take advantage of hyper-local targeting. So when you're thinking about how to target your display advertising programmatically for mobile, there are certain things that mobile offers different than the desktop. And one is this idea of hyper-local targeting, where you can literally pinpoint exactly where the target audience is geographically, and you can run ads to target those people specifically. So for example, you can target somebody not just by exactly where they are, if they're near a store within the block of where your store is, or if they're in a certain area that's known to, there's a shopping mall in the area, or a school, or any kind of demographic area where that neighborhood is more prone to a certain ethnicity or education level or age level, or political leanings, or household income. These are really interesting ideas, and you should think about these when you're running targeted display ads. You can get it very, very precise to the person you're going after. I know that we have customers who, for example, sell gear that's based on weather. So if they're selling, if you're selling raincoats or surfboards or any kind of gear that's geared towards, they might be more prone for certain weather conditions. You can literally show, okay, you can target somebody who's near the beach, or an area where it just got a lot of snowfall, for example. Really interesting ways to zero in and personalize that ad to the right person. So I think Chris, our moderator, will come back in and help us out with a quick poll question.
Thanks so much, Blair. A great presentation so far. Yes, and here the poll question is to our attendees to get a sense of what you're doing with call to actions in your mobile search campaigns, and the particular call to action that drives leads that convert the most often to sales. So here are your choices: the Call Us Now option, the Download This Content option, Register for a free demo or trial, Request a price quote, other or not so sure. Remember, this is the call to action that converts the most. So you're only allowed to choose one of these options. Call us now, download this content, register for free demo trial, request a price quote, not sure, or other, and perhaps if it's other, you might think about submitting that in the question tab. Now, while we're waiting for your answers, I'd like to remind everybody that during the presentation to come, you can submit your questions to our panelists at any time, and we'll try to get to as many as we can at the end. Well, I think that's about it. I see all the answers are coming in. I think it's about complete, so I'm going to push the poll results right now. What is the most productive call to action? Well, call us now. It looks like Sean, it looks like that click to call element is working very, very nicely, followed by download this content, register for free demo and trial, and then the other. I'd like to know more about that, but Sean, it looks like call us now is performing well for people.
That's great. That's a really interesting insight, Chris. Thank you for walking us through that. So I guess everybody, I'd love to walk through sort of a quick high-level overview of different ways that you can optimize the experience on your mobile landing pages, sort of once you've converted that customer through a mobile search sort of ad or through some other form of lead gen. And the reason that mobile is important, I mean, Blair's already sort of walked through a really great overview of kind of the market and how it's evolving. But more broadly, the marketing funnel is no longer this linear step-by-step process through which you have an acquisition channel and then you're kind of gradually proceeding through various stages until you finally convert. Customers are moving through multiple different touch points, and it's important that you think about more than just your web-based touch point, your desktop web-based touch point. There's TV, there's tablets and smartphones, and all of those experiences are very different in terms of the types of things that users want to do while they're working in those experiences. And so it's important to be really optimized and thoughtful about how you deliver different types of experiences on different types of platforms. So this stat in the upper right-hand corner of this slide indicates that 90% of customers, of people, will move between devices to accomplish some goal. And so that's really important. I think that the other sort of on the flip side of that, you can look at the stat down in the lower right-hand or lower left-hand corner of the screen. Almost a quarter of all online shopping in Black Friday is a slightly old stat in 2012, and so you can imagine it's even much higher than that, was done on a mobile or a tablet device. So this, for e-commerce, this is a really important channel, and it's really important to think about every touch point within that channel to make sure that your experiences are optimized. And then I have this last stat here. Mobile phones represent 25% of all email opens, and tablets represent 10.16% of all email opens. So email, making sure that email is optimized for mobile as well, is a very important thing to do, and can be more difficult given the way that email development technologies sort of work, email HTML technologies. So a question that we hear a lot at Optimizely is, should my business be investing in a mobile website or a mobile app? And so I just wanted to sort of walk through some of the pros and cons of that before we got into some examples of different experiences that you can optimize on mobile. So mobile websites are really good at driving reach and acquisition. Everyone on a mobile device has a browser, and when you develop for mobile, links and social shares will drive naturally to the browser. And so it's important to have a website that works well on mobile devices, and we'll talk about what that means in a couple of slides. And that can really help to a great experience in a mobile website can really help to drive further consumption of your content and further acquisition of new customers. On the mobile app side, mobile apps are really good at driving loyalty and engagement. So when you download a mobile app, your brand is now suddenly part of that user's device, and until they decide to download it, there's a presence that you have on their device, and that enables a lot of great opportunities for you to engage with them and to keep them coming back and learning about your brand, your business, and your products. So at Optimizely, we think that at minimum, ultimately, where mobile is eating the world, as Blair mentioned at the very beginning of this presentation. Like ultimately, you need to be thinking about web and apps, but we think it's at minimum very important to have a great mobile website. And the reason for that is that, well, there's a couple of things. So it works cross-platform. As you know, iOS and Android are the two big players in the mobile development space, and mobile apps are different. The technologies to develop mobile apps can be different depending on the platform that you're optimizing for. So when you're developing a mobile website, it's much easier to just build a website that will work in a mobile browser and then have that work across multiple devices. There are also less popular platforms or less widely adopted platforms such as BlackBerry or Windows Phone, which also have different development technologies. And so until you can find the time and the resources to necessarily build out for all of these plethora of platforms that exist, a mobile website is a great opportunity to be able to capture more customers across platform. It's also a lower technical investment. So this relates to the fact that it works cross-platform. You don't have to have engineers building sites that work on Java-based apps for Android and Objective-C for iOS and so on. You can just build one website that works really well on mobile and deploy it to everyone. And also it's easier to modify and maintain. So there's already a plethora of marketing technology that's available for the web that's still kind of getting there on mobile. Optimizely is one example of an SDK that works on mobile apps really well, but there are also plenty of APIs and other sort of code snippet and marketing implementations that you can do on the web that make it even more possible to make changes and to influence experiences without having a technical skill set or a technical team resource to your business. Then once you've sort of established that mobile website, then it becomes time to sort of think about, well, is there a scenario that makes sense to build a mobile app around? Mobile apps help enable some of the following things. So they give your customers access to your product or service offline. So if that's something that's important to your business, or if you can come up with a scenario that makes sense in an offline scenario, then that can really drive more loyalty downstream because they don't need to be connected to the internet, which is a big issue on mobile. It gives your brand a presence on the user's device. I already sort of mentioned that. And that also enables the ability to leverage native functionality such as push notifications, which can be a great retention marketing channel. iBeacons, and that's basically the technology that Apple uses. There's an equivalent technology in other platforms that allow you to do location-based sort of targeting and location-based triggered of messages and things like that within app. So there's a lot of native technology that you can take advantage of with an app. For this presentation, though, we're going to focus on mobile web because that's, we think, the most ubiquitous and the highest impact that you can get with the lowest investment from a technical standpoint. There's also been some discussion about responsive versus separated mobile web pages. So a separated mobile web page you may have seen on the internet before is when you have NewYorkTimes.com, for example, and then there's a mobile site which might be m.newyorktimes.com. So it's a separate page, it's a separate experience that's optimized for mobile. We're seeing more and more customers migrating to just fully responsive websites. So fully responsive websites would be NewYorkTimes.com, and then as you look at that same website on a mobile device, the visual experience modifies and shrinks down to the mobile footprint. So it's text gets bigger and buttons get bigger so that they're made for thumbs and not mouses, and your general experience is simplified and more mobile optimized. This is becoming a bigger, a more commonly done practice, just because the other way of doing it, so having separated sites, has some key drawbacks. So there's issues with sharing on social media sites. So if you're looking at a mobile or a mobile separated page, or M.dot page, and you share that on a social media site, you're sharing that m.link. Link. So even if someone opens it on a desktop website, they still see the mobile experience, and it doesn't look as good on a big screen. There's also an issue with managing feature parity between those channels. So if you have separated pages, then you need to update every single one when you roll out new experiences. That makes it difficult to maintain, and it also makes it difficult to anticipate things like new products, new mobile devices that may come onto the market with different screen sizes and form factors. So responsive pages flow into the size of the screen no matter what it is, whereas mobile separated pages need to be designed for particular screen dimensions. And so if Apple or if Google or whomever comes out with a new phone or a new tablet that is a brand new screen size, which they have a history of doing, the mobile responsive pages will tend to look better on those devices, and they'll tend to drive more engagement. So that's sort of just some background on getting into sort of mobile web and thinking about your landing pages. Once you've built this mobile experience, it's really important to think about how you can optimize that experience and what sort of actionable insights you can derive from that experience. So this is a quote from one of our customers at RentPath. RentPath is the company that owns ApartmentGuide.com and a few other sort of rental apartment finding services. He says that one of the biggest mistakes that a company can make is to assume that the functionality on the big screen will work on the little one. And what he's referring to is this whole idea of optimization or website A/B testing sort of being this established practice on the web, on the desktop web. And so marketers have kind of built up this knowledge repository of different best practices and different insights about their customers based on A/B tests that they've run on the web. And they assume, and this is often a false assumption, that those experiences will translate really well to mobile. Well, the fact is that even though the customers themselves, the users of your product or of your service, are transferring to mobile, it's the same people as on the desktop, their behaviors are not transitioning the same way. Their behaviors are much more different. And that's a big sort of result of a bunch of things like the screen size. The screen size limits the number of things, the amount of information you can consume on a device, and the sort of the experience in general is you're not sitting down and working at a computer. You're on the go. You might be waiting for a train. You might be waiting for a cab, or somebody might interrupt you and you need to turn off the phone quickly. So it's just a different contextual point, and so you need to think about how can I really optimize this experience for mobile devices, and think about A/B testing as you optimize that. And so I wanted to give you kind of a couple of questions to think about and ask your teams as you sort of engage in this mobile web optimization experience. And the first is thinking about mobile-specific UI elements. So right now we're looking at two different screenshots of Fandango's mobile and desktop website. So their desktop website is on the left, and you can see that on their checkout page, they're emphasizing things, or they're using web-based elements. So drop-down menus for selecting how many people you'd like to go to this movie, checkboxes for other things like gift cards and confirmation of completing the terms of service, things like that. And then this on the right side is a mobile version of that exact same checkout form. So now you can see they've replaced those drop-down menus with buttons that are plus and minus that are easy to push with your thumb. It's just a much more consumable experience. They've separated out into multiple stages some of the checkboxes and things like that, so you don't need to scroll through multiple things, and you're sort of focused on one task on each page, which is a much better experience on mobile because, again, when you're thinking about a mobile device, many of us have mobile devices on the phone, if not all of us today. You get interrupted a lot, and you need to be sort of like an experience that you're engaging with on mobile needs to be quick, and it needs to be focused on what you're trying to accomplish, or else you'll lose people. And that sort of brings me to this next one, which is removing distractions from checkout funnels. So we've got two examples here of different mobile checkout pages. The first is Dillard's, the retailer. And what they've done a really good job of is staying very focused on the key action that you want a user to do during checkout. And checkout is a really important time because this is when you make money as a business. And so they've removed all of the other links and all the other navigational elements. You can see there's not even a menu or a footer on this page. It's really just enter your credit card and continue your checkout process. GNC, on the other hand, has another checkout page which does a good job of sort of listing out a lot of information about what you're purchasing and what the taxes are and things like that. But it also maintains a lot of the site level sort of navigation elements. You can see there's a home button, store locator. If you look at the bottom of the page on the far right side, there's the footer remains and social sharing links, things that aren't necessarily helping the user complete the action of checkout. So this is something that, it can be difficult to organizationally accept, and this is why A/B testing is a good opportunity to say, removing these links makes sense because, it actually drove X amount of conversions. But this is one of the things that where small changes can have a really big impact on that. Also thinking about checkout, so on a mobile device in particular, mobile still, while it's eating the world and while it's, there are billions of users around the world, it's still a newer platform, and with newer platforms, people are less comfortable sharing information on it. And so this remains true for the web. It's even more true on mobile. And so we find that a lot of our customers are doing things like emphasizing security at points where they're asking for personal information. So you can see here's an example of 1-800-Flowers.com, and they've done a great job of really overemphasizing the idea that this is a secure checkout, and we are not going to share your information. We're not going to do anything. You can trust us, and they're even providing a phone number that you can call for assistance. I think they could even take this a step further, as Blair has been talking about, and make this a click-to-call number. But this is just a good example of how they can really overemphasize things that we may take for granted because we're so familiar with how things work on the web, on the desktop web. So this next slide talks about a specific A/B test that was written about in Conversion XL. I've included a link at the bottom of the page, so when you get the slides later, you can check it out in more detail. This is just sort of a UI element that I thought was interesting and has been gaining a lot of traction because of mobile devices. So many of you may have heard of this, you may not have. It's called the hamburger icon. So it's these three lines. It's called a hamburger because it looks sort of like a hamburger. If the bun and the two buns and the meat patty in the middle. And typically, when you see this icon, users have been trained to know that this is a button that you can push that will expand a menu in one way or another. And so this website ran an A/B test where they tried different treatments of a hamburger icon versus just the original, which was the word, menu. And they actually found, in all cases, you can see the results at the bottom of the screen here, in all four of these options, they actually increased the amount of revenue that they drove from this experience just by changing the hamburger navigation, because it was more obvious and it made more sense in the mobile context that a user would that a menu would exist there. So it was just easier for people to navigate, and all they had to do was change the icon. Another example is from ApartmentGuide.com. So ApartmentGuide.com is one of the companies that's owned by RentPath, so the company that we quoted earlier in the presentation. And ApartmentGuide.com ran an experiment where they added spotlight properties. So these are sort of like promoted properties that are available for rent in their search results. So search is one of the most common actions that's done on mobile in general. And in ApartmentGuide.com's website, it's actually the most common action that users take in their mobile site. And so what they did was they'd had this Spotlight Properties product that they'd been selling to businesses and they'd been promoting to their customers, to their users, and they'd been doing that on the desktop web, but they'd been preventing that from happening on mobile web. They thought that if they added it on mobile web, they would increase revenue, but they would expect to see a loss in customers, a loss in actually the number of customers that went through the experience, because it felt more promotional. It felt like, oh, I'm just getting an ad. And the reason that they had that insight was because that's what happened when they did it on the web. So they had A/B tested Spotlight preference properties on the web, and they saw an increase in revenue but a decrease in number of customers. So they expected the same thing to happen when they added Spotlight properties to mobile, and actually that didn't happen. So the exact opposite was true. This variation where they added Spotlight preferences actually increased to a statistically significant degree the number of customers by 1.6%. Now this percentage may seem small, but this website does a lot of traffic, and so it had a meaningful, I can't share the exact revenue numbers for privacy reasons, but it had a meaningfully positive impact on ApartmentGuide.com's bottom line. It's an unintuitive result that they only would have found out had they done A/B testing. And so this is just another reason to challenge those assumptions that you have from web experiences, because they may be different on mobile. And that's sort of my kind of presentation. I guess I'll hand it back to Chris now with another poll question.
Thanks so much, Sean. Great presentation. A tremendously rich amount of material there. And yes, we do have a final poll question. And this is asking our attendees about offline conversions following mobile leads. What percentage of your mobile leads convert offline with a phone call? Well, is it in-store visit? Would it be a phone call? Would it be some other type of offline contact with your company? First choice, not sure. Second choice, more than 3/4. Third choice, between 50% and 75%. And the last choice, less than 50% of mobile leads convert offline. And we'll just take a few seconds to choose, again, just one. And please keep those questions coming in. If we can't get to all your questions at the end of the presentation, we'll be sure to get back to you afterwards, offline, to answer your questions. So I think we've got all of the answers coming in, and what do we have here? Well, not sure. That seems to indicate that there might be a paucity of metrics involved. Blair, what do you think about these results, and how might we improve our metrics on offline conversions?
Well, you didn't rig that poll for me, did you, to set up my next presentation, because that fits right in. So thanks, everybody. I wanted to conclude with some tips on how to actually track conversions, offline conversions, specifically phone calls, from all of your marketing, including search and display. So if you're looking to track ROI, if you have that hole like many of you do in your ROI data, it has a tremendously negative impact on not only your ability to optimize your search campaigns or whatever marketing you're doing to generate more of those high-value calls that convert to sales more often, like we saw from the first poll, but really, if you're an agency and you're trying to get credit for and to prove to your clients how you're generating value, engagement, and revenue to their business, leads to their business, you can't do that if you have this huge hole in your analytics data around phone calls. So what you would do is use a call attribution software to track calls from any kind of campaign. It works for SEO, PPC. It works for offline with print and TV. It works for content, display ads, any kind of marketing you're trying to track. You can use a call attribution software to track those calls back to the exact marketing source, the exact marketing channel that generated it. And that way you can fill in that gap in your ROI data and get full credit for the work you're doing. Not just if you're doing it for a client, it's a great way to prove value, but if you're doing it internally, you want to be able to go to your CMO and your CEO and be able to show how your marketing is impacting leads and opportunities and sales and revenue, and call attribution software can help you do that. Here's how it works for search specifically. The top level, you see one searcher who goes to Google, Yahoo, or Bing and runs a search and ends up on your web page and calls the number at the top. This is a click to call. They hit that button and it triggers a call. And that call will be tracked back to the exact search keywords, the exact ad and campaign, and whatever web pages they were on before they called. So you'll know exactly what's working and what's not. You can see how the numbers are different From the second visitor, they get a unique trackable number as well that they see that's different from the one that the first searcher sees. And this way, you're able to attribute that searcher's specific visit, interaction on your site, where they came from, which keywords and ads, which search engine drove the call, and then what web pages they actually called from. It works for calls from your mobile site or your regular site. It also works for calls directly from call extensions. So if someone calls from the search results of the call extension directly, you can still attribute that call directly to the keywords and the search campaigns that generated it, which is an amazing thing. And for programmatic display, for example, if someone sees your display ad in an app or while they're browsing a site and they click on it, they can go to your landing page and place that call. Or if they browse around and eventually make a call, that will still track that entire interaction back to the source that generated the call. You can then view reports on, either through specific marketing channels or high-level reports on marketing channels, or you can drill down to see, the call data and how many calls each of those campaigns have generated, as well as stuff which is really interesting like call duration, how long each of the calls was, which for many agencies and for marketers, that is a telltale sign of a quality lead, is if you're generating longer conversations, longer calls with the sales agent. That usually means that person is more engaged and is a high quality call. And you can generate reports on that. You can also drill down, as you see here, and generate reports specifically about the domain that referred them, the keyword search, if it's a search campaign, for example, the exact call, what the caller ID was, the time of day they called, all this amazing information that you can capture and have complete visibility into in order to understand what's working and what's not, and then optimize your campaigns and your channels accordingly. So as I mentioned, you can generate reports on web pages, so you can see which web pages are doing the best job of converting someone to a phone call, or someone lands on that page and makes a call. But you can also see which web pages are the most popular in terms of that initial visit. So this is the web page that's generating the visit that initially down the line becomes a phone call as they browse through. So you can see which those really sticky landing pages that people are coming to that are eventually becoming a phone call, which is great information for marketers to have. And again, as I said, you can get detailed analytics on every call in terms of, high level. You can drill down into channels and see high level detail on unique calls and average talk times, or you can drill into literally every single call and see what's going on. You can see where callers are calling from, which is a tremendous data to have, especially for search marketing and for display when you're looking to target geographically. So if you're running local search campaigns, perhaps a national campaign with local search implications, you can see where those calls are coming from, perhaps where the areas are where you're doing the best work, or areas where you're needing to do better. And you can optimize your bidding, your keyword bidding based on the time of days, the locations, where the person's calling from in order to drive more conversions. So that's for call attribution reporting. Those are what the tool gives you. But you can also see, you can integrate that data with other tools that you use every day. For example, Google Analytics or Google Universal Analytics. Many of us use the Google Analytics and Universal Analytics to track web behavior. But you can also include, as you can see there, you can include call data directly in those reports. So you get a holistic view, a 360 view of not just the online aspect, but the offline aspect, the call conversion, and how that fits into the journey of how when people are on your site, where they came from, what they did, how they converted. If you use bid management, I know it's very popular with agencies. It's very popular with retail organizations. If you're using a bid management software platform like Marin, Kinshu, Acquisio, or DoubleClick in order to automate keyword bidding for search and for display and other PPC campaigns, you can also include call data in those. So you're not just optimizing based on web, based on clicks and web conversions, but you're optimizing based on phone calls. And I'm going to show a quick case study later on with an example of why that's so great. And lastly, CRM integration. So if you have a Salesforce, if you have a CRM system like Salesforce or Sugar CRM or Microsoft, or if your clients do, you can integrate your call data directly into there, so you can not only understand what's driving leads, phone call leads, but you can follow those phone leads through the sales funnel to see what's actually driving opportunities and revenue. So now your ROI metrics, your ROI data is not just about conversions, but actual sales. You can do reports on how search is driving actual sales or display or any kind of marketing you're doing. So you can really prove your value, or you can better optimize for what's actually driving sales, not just what's driving leads and conversions. So lastly, a quick piece about, we've talked about attribution and getting credit and optimizing, but what about once the call comes in? There are things you can do to actually improve each call's ability to convert in real time to a sale. So while we've talked about how calls are often the best, highest quality lead, not every call your marketing generates is going to be a great sales lead. A lot of them will not be, and you don't want to necessarily pass leads of poor quality onto your sales agents or onto your clients if you're an agency's sales staff. So what you can do is set up an IVR, which is an interactive voice response menu, very simple, that you can use to as this automated qualifier that can be as simple as asking people to press 1 to speak to sales. Or it can be more elaborate if you're a financial services institution or a home loan involved with home loans or whatever your industry is. You may want to ask more targeted questions before making sure this person is a legit lead to pass on to your sales staff. And you can do that using an IVR. And then those calls can be sent directly on, and the poor ones, the ones that aren't ready for sales, can be sent elsewhere, whether it's to another IVR or to a voicemail or maybe to a different department like human resources or a receptionist or someone like that. And lastly, think about how calls are routed and how important it is to get calls routed right away to the right place. And you can actually set up rules with call attribution software like DialogTech to actually decide, the software can read where the person's calling from and send that call differently. So if you're running search campaigns, DialogTech can automatically route the caller based on their exact where they are exactly in the country. So whether if they're on mobile phones, they use cell tower triangulation to decide where that person is, and you can just route that person differently automatically based on where they are. You can route based on time of day or day of week differently if you want. You can set those rules up. You can send more callers to your better sales agents. So if you've got sales agents that close a higher percentage of calls, maybe you'll send a higher percentage of calls to those agents. You can set it up all to happen automatically. And you can send calls anywhere, to a call center, to a store, to a cell phone, to a wide variety of cell phones at once, or whatever you want to do. So that's a very interesting way to think about optimizing beyond the initial conversion. So doing things that you can set up in order to help the conversion become a sale, which is ultimately what we want to do. So a quick case study before, I know we're running short on time. Here's an agency that used DialogTech software to help one of the biggest HVAC manufacturers in the world. They were hired, this agency, Square One, was hired in order to drive phone leads in the United States to 50 local dealers. So it's a national campaign with local search implications. And how Square One did it was, they used our software along with a bid management platform named Kenshu, and they hooked those two up together. So they started running search campaigns, paid search campaigns, and whenever someone converted either offline with a phone call or online, that data was passed directly from DialogTech into Kenshu, and they were able to automatically optimize keyword spending based on what's driving conversions, not just online conversions, but the offline phone call. And automatically across search engines, they were able to optimize in order to drive more calls at a lower cost. And once those calls came in, They used a simple IVR from DialogTech to screen out the calls. To basically, you can see the quote from square one above, but they basically just asked that the person press 1 to speak to a local dealer. And that way they were forcing the call to validate that they actually were a human being and interested in speaking to a local dealer. And then our software automatically routed them to the closest local dealer based on wherever they were calling. So they were able to do set up a national campaign with local implications where those calls were routed correctly. And Square One was able to do reports to show how many calls were routed to each dealer, to show the keywords that were driving conversions, to prove these are the calls that we sent. They were able to record conversations that happened to prove call quality. They can do reports on call duration as well. All these amazing things that happen to give you visibility, not just what's driving the call, but what happens on that call. And most marketers don't have that, and it's an amazing thing to have, to be able to prove what's happening actually on the call and how your marketing is impacting the bottom line. So the end result was that they were able to generate 75% more phone leads to local dealers, all while cutting their paid search spend by 65% by optimizing on what's working and eliminating the spend on what's not. So that's it for today. I know we're running short on time, but I wanted to, if you're interested at all in learning more about DialogTech software, you can visit our website or give us a call. We also have some great resources on content you can see. And if you're interested in learning more about Optimizely, they've got a great they've got a great ebook there you can download. But go to their website. They've got some great on-demand webinars. I'm sure they'd be happy to talk to you as well about their amazing software. And one last point. DialogTech software does integrate with Optimizely. So when you're running your content experiments on Optimizely, you can include that phone component as well. So thanks everybody for joining. I'll hand this back off to our moderator, Chris, hopefully for quick Q&A.
Thanks so much, Blair. Great presentation, and we are indeed opening the floor now to your questions. As a reminder, keep them coming in, and if we can't get to them all, we'll just go a little bit over time just to make sure we can get in as many as we can. But if we can't get all of them in, we'll be back to you via email with your answers. Blair, one of our attendees asked in particular about industries. Which industries are most impacted by mobile search?
That's a great question. I believe I showed some stats from an analyst firm named BIA Kelsey, but Google, and there's a lot of great research on this. Some of the top ones, certainly automotive industry is very big. Retail is huge. Financial services and insurance, very large as well. And medical, to be honest. Those are some of the big 4 or 5 that come to mind. But Google's got some tremendous research on this, and I'd be happy to, whoever asked that question, if they wanted to follow up with me later, I'd be happy to send some links on where to get that data.
Sounds good. This next question is to Sean. Sean, you had a great presentation about the pluses and minuses of separate sites versus responsive sites. But one of our attendees, maybe you could elaborate just a little bit on that, and also if tablets are affected here, and in particular mobile-specific UI elements. I'd be curious to know if you need a separate site, for example, to have mobile-specific UI elements.
That's a great question. Thanks, Chris. I think that one of the biggest trends that we're seeing in mobile web from our clients is that movement from separated sites. So again, separated sites means like you have a www dot site for the desktop and an m dot or a t dot site for a mobile or a tablet site, respectively. We're seeing a movement away from that to having just a single site, a www dot whatever your website is. And then making that site mobile responsive. So what mobile responsive means is that the page is built in a way using just basic HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, built in a way that it can change dynamically as you change the size of the screen that the website is being viewed in. So you can actually test this on many browsers on the desktop today. If you just go to some website and that's mobile optimized, and then make change the size of the window to be the size of a mobile phone. You'll see many websites will actually change in real time, and that movement is starting to be more accepted as sort of the general practice. And the reason for that is that it's easier to share those websites on social networks so users don't have different experiences depending on the platform that they log in on, and it's easier to maintain them because you have only one site to update features, functionality, promotions, messaging, things like that, rather than 2 or 3 sites.
Got it. Blair, one of our attendees asked this question. It obviously comes from an agency. The question is this: many of my clients share concerns about using multiple unique phone numbers for tracking instead of, let's say, using one main number, which has the advantages of branding. How do you overcome this concern?
Well, if it's a branding question, certainly for mobile, when someone visits your mobile site, usually you can have an icon. An icon or a button now. People don't usually list their entire phone number, but if they do, most people don't remember phone numbers anymore for mobile. But I think if the question is more around SEO implications for having multiple phone numbers on a site, the way that DialogTech software works is it automatically displays a unique phone number using Java. And that JavaScript is not indexed by Google, so there's no implications on SEO for using call tracking. But if it's really around branding, if you have a 1-800 number that you want to use, you can still use DialogTech software to help control the routing of calls from that number, and also set up an IVR. We have a big company called Sleep Train that uses us for the IVR in order to qualify callers and route them to their closest local store. So there is still a lot of great things you can do if you just want to keep your 800 number, if it's a vanity number, for example. But I would argue that most people don't remember phone numbers anymore, and when they're looking up on their smartphones just using click to call, they just hit that button. They don't even know what the phone number is.
Good point. And Blair, this next question is to you as well. Your comments about organic search versus paid search were very interesting. Should you do anything differently when attributing calls from organic on the one side or paid on another?
Well, I don't know that you would do it so much differently attribution-wise, but I do think that for organic search, you want to understand the journey. So that report I showed where you can see which pages are most popular, initial visits. You want to know what that page is from organic search. And you also want to be able to map that journey through and seeing which content is converting the most. For a paid program, you're controlling if someone's calling directly from the ad or they're visiting your landing page, you have control over that. But for people who are running organic and you're trying to optimize SEO for various search for various web pages, I would say that understanding which web pages from people are visiting first from organic is of tremendous value, perhaps more so than the paid search part.
Got it. And we have time for just one more question, and I'll throw it out to either one of you. One of our attendees asks about driving leads for insurance companies. One of his clients receives many phone calls, naturally. How do you recommend judging call quality when they come in? Right now, I can't prove to customers that my campaigns are driving quality calls. Any thoughts from one of you?
Well, I can answer, at least from our end. Certainly, it would depend on, if you're an agency, I touched on this a little, but you can record the calls using our software if you wanted to. So you can literally record every call to go in and prove call quality. You can also run reports on call duration to see how long either each call is lasting or on average. That's usually a good indication. There's also a technology called speech analytics that we have where you can literally transcribe each conversation and run searches through actual conversations for certain keywords or phrases spoken during the conversation that might indicate a quality call. And that way you can show that this call was a quality call as opposed to not. There's a wide variety of things you can do, and I'd be happy afterwards if someone wanted to set up a call to go over what those are.
Great.
Chris, I did see one question I wanted to at least address. I see a lot of questions here on offline conversions, so TV, print, radio. Yes, you can use call tracking and call analytics. Everything I talked about for search and display, you can use those for DialogTech, certainly. You can use those for your offline marketing as well. It's not just digital marketing. It works for anything.
Terrific. Great presentation and terrific answers, both of you. Well, we've reached the end of our webinar, a little bit over the end of our webinar. I'd like to ask all of our attendees to take a moment to answer our exit survey by clicking on the red widget, which you'll find at the bottom of your console. If you'd be so kind as to do that, we'll get a sense of how you responded and how you liked the presentation today. And remember, you can also view and listen to this presentation on demand using the same link you used today. You'll receive an email as soon as the archive is ready. So on behalf of our guests, Blair Symes of DialogTech and Sean Oliver of Optimizely, this has been Chris Hosford with the Ad Age team. Thank you for your time and have a great and prosperous day.